Greetings hobbyists, this is Add Ons, and in this video we're going to look at how we can make objects like a corridor scene that's going to have duplicated geometry but in a more interesting way. So I thought this was a good topic to cover after watching this series by Ryan King. It's an amazing series, go check it out, there's a link in the description, and it covers how to make a sci-fi corridor. Admittedly, it's more for CG work than it is for 3D printing design, but it's still got a lot of great tips, and if you're interested in texturing and things like that, it's so useful, so do check that out. But in it, as is often the way with CG work as opposed to 3D design for printing, the corridor was made and we can see that it looks a little bit repetitive. It's the same thing over and over again. And I wanted to look at how we can solve that problem but still not spend hours and hours over the modelling. So let's have a look at this and see what we can do. So I've got my cube and I'm just going to S to scale that up. You can see my screencast keys in the bottom right hand corner, and I'm going to go into edge mode and let's Control and R and put in an edge loop here, and then sticking in edge mode we can select that edge, and then let's just S and Y, no X that out so it's slightly wider, and then I'm going to go into face mode, delete that face, that face, that face and that face, let's delete those, and then we want this to be a lot longer, so let's S and Y, so we've got a longer corridor somewhere around there, and then back into edge mode, Control and R, and let's divide that up into a load of different bits, something like there, and then right click to confirm that. So this is a pretty good starting point for a corridor. I will talk about the different way of doing this as well that's done for CG work, but for these purposes that's going to be fine. Now what I'm going to do is Control and R and put an edge loop on the top and at the bottom, and importantly, because this is going to be for 3D printing, we need to add some thickness, so I'm going to Control and A, apply the scale, and I'm going to go here, add modifier, and let's add a solidify. We want that to be 1 for the offset, so it's going out, and then we'll up that thickness to somewhere there, but that's fairly arbitrary for this. Either way, we're going to come in here and apply this so we've got solid geometry, and then we've got this ready to go. Now, so this is easy to see, what I'm going to do is Shift and Z, come here and then press H to hide that geometry so we can just see one side of this corridor. So what we're going to do is just make a few interesting bits for this corridor. So what I'm going to do is come into face mode, let's select that, and this can be whatever you want. I'm just going to sort of muck around with this, so I'm going to inset that a little bit. Control and E, and then let's subdivide each of those, and then let's do something like I, and then I again, so we're insetting those individually. Let's E to extrude that out, and then we can just fiddle around with some of these edges. So I'm going to come to edge mode, select that edge there, let's Control and B that, so we've got something a bit more interesting. Let's do that one a little bit smaller, so again, so it's interesting, and then we'll do, I don't know, this one and that one sort of there, and maybe that one and that one, something like that. Just something so it's a little bit interesting, and then let's come to this one and let's go to edge mode again, select those two edges, Control and E, and then subdivide them, and then we can, I don't know, let's go into vertex mode, that one, J to join those, go into face mode, and then I to inset those, and then we can E to extrude those a little bit more. So just something that's interesting for panels. And then we'll do something different here. What should we do for this one? Let's make a quick and easy sort of vent, so let's I to inset that again, E, and then I, and then E to bring that in, and then we're just going to go to edges, and we're going to select that edge, that edge. This is a bit of a dirty way of making a vent, so up to you if you want to copy this, but there are slightly nicer ways to do this, which I've covered previously. So let's up that to there, let's actually go to 15, and then we're going to go into edge, and I'm going to select every other edge, something like that, and then let's just go into side view, Shift and Z, and then we'll just G and move those, and then move them down to the other one, so we've got something like that. Oh, and for some reason that selected those, let's undo that, and then try that again, so G to move them, and we'll just go somewhere like there, and we've got a very quick sort of looking vent. And that'll do just for the demonstration. And what else do we want? Let's maybe have a TV, so let's go to that face, I, and then again Control and E, subdivide, maybe let's subdivide these, and then we can select some odd faces. Let's do that one, and that one. We're going to I to inset them, E to extrude them, I to inset again, E to extrude them in, and then we're going to select each of these edges, So just those ones, and then we'll do the same for the others as well. And we'll Control and B, just so we've got something a bit more rounded that looks maybe a little bit more like the inside of a television screen. And that will probably do. We could have done that a little bit better. And then finally, just because I want to demonstrate this does work in other ways as well, let's select this face, I to inset that, and then edge, let's that one, Control and E to subdivide, and then let's up that to 3, and then we'll do the same with these, and Control and E and subdivide, and then we can select, let's go to that face, and that face. We'll extrude those out. Actually, let's select that face and that face, extrude that out a little bit further, E to extrude that out as well. And then we can just do something like, let's go into Cable Rater. If you haven't used Cable Rater before, there is a link in the description of how to use that. And I'm going to select, let's say, there and there. That looks pretty good, actually. And let's press C, because we need fill caps. And let's S to make that a little bit thinner, and D to make that a little bit more of a interesting cable. Q, so we can make another one. Let's go from there to there, and then let's D to make that a little bit less, and then we'll do one more. So Q there, and let's do there, and yeah, that should do okay. Let's go into edit mode, and we can just make sure that these don't interact in a way that's not going to be good. Let's do that one, something like that. Maybe this needs to come along a bit. And then we'll do the same thing with this one. Let's S to scale that down, and we'll G to move that around to there. And then we'll select all of those, edit mode. Let's G and move that up a little bit, and those, and we'll move those just so that we've got everything perfectly in to our faces. And actually, let's move that one around to there. Cool, there we go. So we've got something that we'll do here. We've got a nice little bit of variation, and importantly, if we want this to work, we're going to have to convert these to a mesh. So convert to and mesh. We're going to go into vertex mode and press 3 with machine tools to fix any non-manifold edges. The caps on these are often not manifold, so we need to make sure that's sorted. In fact, do these have caps? No? Okay, let's just Alt select there and F. I think it's done that for one of them and not the others. Let's Alt select there, then F, add to isolation mode. That one's got caps, and then that one's not got caps. So let's there, F, and then Alt click there and F. So we've now got that all sorted, and we've got no problems. And select all those, select our object, Control and plus on the number pad, and then we can H and H and H those, and we've got this sorted. I am just going to come in here and apply all for those booleans. So we've got one solid object here, and if we wanted to, we could mirror that onto the other side, so we're pretty good to go. Now, at this point, what I am going to do is Shift and D and bring that along on the X-axis, so we can talk about this in two different points, basically. Let's just H to hide that for now. And for this one, we're going to have a look at what you'd normally do for CG work. This is what most CG artists will do, because in reality, this is going to be in the background. You're not going to be paying lots of attention to it, so you don't need it to be everything that it can be. So let's Alt-X, and we'll mirror that. That is using hard ops, and we're going to go into vertex mode, and I'm going to select all of these vertices, delete those, and then we're just going to F, and then we can select those, F, and then edge mode, and then F, 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 and we've got our object. And then what you'd normally do is just go to add modifier array, and we don't want that in the X, so let's turn that to 0, we want it in the Y, 1, and then we can just up our count for us however long we want our corridor to be. And we've got our corridor, and it's a bit boring. It's the same thing again and again and again and again, and you sort of go through and you go past the same thing again repeatedly, and it looks like a computer game from like the 90s where everything looks the same. And that's the problem with arrays. Everything looks the same, but there's a really nice way to not have that problem, Does require a little bit more work, but not much. So we're going to come back into our original. Now this is going to use a add-on, and that add-on is called Mesh Copier. It's created by Kashiro CG, and there is a link in the description. This is the same person that makes things like Grid Modeler, another awesome add-on that's really fun to use. If people are interested in that, I'd happily do a video on that. I'll put a link to that in the description as well, just so you can check it out and see what it does. But Mesh Copier, if I go into face mode, or actually edge mode, we can see what this does. So I want to copy these, but I don't want them to be uniformly copied or repetitively copied in exactly the same order. That's what makes it obvious. So the way Mesh Copier works is you just select the outer edge of what you want to copy. So I want this outside section here, and you'll notice I've been careful to make these all the same size by creating a load of edge loops, which therefore are equally divided. We'll come back to that in a second. But if I right click, once you've installed Mesh Copier and click Mesh Copier, you then get these options. We want to copy what's inside our selection, so that's inside, and we want to set this as our source, and you'll notice that now everything gets highlighted. Once you've done that, you're ready to go. All you do is go into face mode, and you can select as many faces as you want. So for example, I can select that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one, let's say. Right click, Mesh Copier, and then paste. And we've now copied that, but it's not all in the same distribution, so it's going to look more interesting. You can do the same with all these other ones. Right click, Mesh Copier, again, set a source, it highlights everything. Go into face mode, let's do one there, and then let's do another one there. Right click, Mesh Copier, and then paste. So you can see how quick this is to do. Let's just do another one of these. I'm going to do this one because notice that this includes objects that we boolean together. So actually, when you start doing this with things like an asset library, or you build up an asset library to bring in these objects on your face and then you copy them across, you can make little sets that are really nice to use. Again, I can talk about that if people are interested in it in another video. So set source, and then let's go to face mode, and we'll do there, and let's do one there. And again, Mesh Copier, and then paste. So it works with anything as long as you have applied your booleans. Now, just in terms of this, it's already looking way more interesting if we were coming to this as a corridor. There's more variation without the repetition, but what's great about Mesh Copier is it does more than this. So let's just take these TVs for an example. So I'm going to select that edge, that edge, that edge, and that edge. Again, Mesh Copier, set a source, and then I'm going to go to face mode, and let's say we're going to put one there, and then right click and Mesh Copier and paste. But let's say we want something different. Let's come to this one, Mesh Copier, and then we'll go to paste again. But there is other things you can do with this. For example, we could rotate this around. So now notice that it attempts to rotate it 1 times round anti-clockwise, and you could do it twice, so now it's the opposite way up, or whatever you want to do. So that is really useful. Do notice that it is going to distort your mesh if things aren't square, so that's something to consider. For example, that looks a little bit odd, that looks a bit better, and now we've got more variation. You can also, let's go into edge mode, and let's just select this one because it's going to work better with this as a shape, and then come over here. We can also, if we Mesh Copier, paste, and we can still do the rotation if we want to, but we can also invert the paste, so now it is going in instead of out, so that's quite nice as an option to add a little bit more variation to this. And you can still rotate as well if you wanted to. So again, way more variation is really easy and quick to make. Now I will say, if you do this, if you go to face orientation, this will set the face orientation as the wrong way round. So if you're going to do that, just A to select everything, probably vertex mode is easy to see, Shift and N, and then you will recalculate that so you don't have that issue. Again, I'll just come here and show you the face orientation. You can see that's fixed. So that's the other way of doing it. So there's lots of things you can play around with here to make your variation. And I should say, if you are going to do that, obviously the biggest problem with you doing this rotation, if I set that as our source, if we come to somewhere like here, and we add that in, if we're going to start rotating things around, notice it won't like, or it won't look as good for this. Let's stop inverting the paste. We can also flip horizontally if we want to, so that again has a slightly different effect than rotating it around because it's got a horizontal flip. And then you could still rotate these around, so you'll notice that now we're going in the opposite way, so effectively you can also make it a vertical flip if you wanted to. But if we do this slightly less, Notice this is going to distort because these aren't square, our tubes, so do be careful with that as you decide what to do. But I think you'll agree this makes for a much more interesting and varied look when you can rotate these different areas around. So for things like this, I think Mesh Copier is absolutely fantastic. It's also useful because it can change things around in the orientation. Notice that these are pointing in different directions and it will deal with all of that very easily. So I personally think that this is a really, really good tool for just adding those greebles, those sort of little bits that you want to add to make a scene interesting without it becoming boring and uniform. As always, I hope you found that video useful. If you did, please do hit that like button and subscribe. It helps share the video around. If you've got any other tricks like this, please mention them in the comments. I love to find out new things. And if you want to support the channel further, feel free to head on over to the Patreon page. There's a link in the description and all support is really appreciated. Have a great day, guys.